Thanks so much for inviting me. It's been a great morning already. Got lost from the station, got wet, but had a life-enhancing conversation with Neil there in the front row. Met Jill, Keris is here. It's just great. I suppose I ought to get on with this bit though, shouldn't I?
We've got it.
Okay. You've got a great programme, so it's a real delight here. The short story I want to share has got three elements to it, really, three bits to it. First one, I just wanted to talk about what is good and great about at the moment and the way things are. And then probably move on to activity, broader sense, probably isn't working for some sections of the community, which is not a new story, and some challenges within that. And then the third and the main part really is the story we're seeing emerge from places like Greater Manchester as one of the pilots, but other places actually as well, a growing number of other places, as they really try and think differently about the challenge of inactivity and underrepresentation, and try and think more holistically, more systematically about the kind of change that is needed. This is really weird. I can see it on the screen, but I'm so used to pointing and looking up, so we'll see how we go on. I was in a heated discussion in a London borough yesterday with a councillor about money, strangely enough, and about the lack of it locally, and it was a fair comment and it's a real issue. But I was sitting in that room with 3 or 4 colleagues from Public Health, Director of Social Services. They've still got a sports development team, can you believe that? There were about 12 of us in the room. And I don't know, it just came to me, I said, yeah, I think the challenge is about money, clearly, but it's not in some respects, because look at the resources in this room. I mean, look around the room, look at the delegate list. Perhaps our biggest resource, and I highly will touch on this, is us, is ourselves, is you, is me, in terms of the people and the effort and the system, the workforce, if you like. I know money's a challenge, clearly, but isn't that the truth? Actually, there's plenty of resource, fantastic resource, and it's with us and it's between us. And the slide really is saying, so what is it that binds us? I guess an awful lot of you, we won't do a survey, yourselves are active or have been active and have got a really positive association with being active, and the kind of just basic joy that brings, that very intense personal feeling. But kind of professionally, what binds us is a description like this. It's a set of our work in sport and physical activity, our investment is for a broader purpose, and of course locally that's probably always been the reason why you've invested. The last government strategy towards sport embodied this as well, so you might argue we're catching up. But that's an important thing that binds us as well, because it is about the outcomes, and it is about the kind of transformative power of sport and physical activity. I know it sounds a bit dramatic, but I guess that's what really binds us in our work and in our... The picture is, the image there is of Jaywick in Essex. Particularly place had its own Channel 5 programme, can you believe that, about poverty. And being real about it and being humble about it, sport and physical activity isn't going to transform that community in one sense. It's not going to provide money it's not going to tackle fuel poverty, it's not going to tackle hunger, it's not going to tackle lack of aspiration in a direct, immediate sense. But it is and can do an awful lot for that place in terms of building on the energy that's there, building on the assets that's there, giving people, dare I say, being more active, you know what I mean? So I'm just saying there's a place for sport and physical activity. And I guess that's asking ourselves that question about places, about people and place, and what do we want life to be like for those communities, with those communities, and seeing the role of physical activity in sport is what we're about. So I'm sure you'll all be talking a lot, working on asset-based approaches, starting with what's good in places, starting with what's good in communities. So I want to start also with what's good in terms of what we're all doing. So, relatively recent slide, looking across to the right, 28 million people are active. Forget the definition for a moment. Very many people are active and finding purpose and meaning and engagement in being active, whether that's physical activity or sport. So there's a lot to celebrate. You and we are heavily involved in that, so thank you for what you're doing. That's a really important starting point to start with what's already good and what's already there, already active. Many of those people, of course, will always find physical activity and sport in their lives, regardless of what you do or we do or what the system does. But many won't. So we're already together playing a key role in keeping that number active. But what isn't working? What isn't working? Now, whether it's gender, disability, income, we've known for 30 plus years, as long as we've been measuring it, that for many groups, and even like yourself is a kind of a simplistic view, but for many groups, being active isn't the norm. This is just a slide about socioeconomics, and basically it shows you the relationship between income and activity levels. So they're the socioeconomic classifications, but basically says the lower down that list you are, the less likely you are to be active, are you more likely to be active. So the top is roughly social class 1 and 2, the bottom one socioeconomic class 8. And it's locally, of course, that challenge you will see is most vivid, and it's probably where the solutions lie as well in terms of working with communities. And it's those people who probably will have the poorest life conditions. It's probably where there is the most gain in terms of increasing levels of physical activity and sport engagement in whatever form. So I've painted a picture of what's good and great, and I've painted a picture of what's the challenge. And of course, to yourselves, this is actually a slide we use when we're working with. There's plenty of other challenges. I mean, the very fact that you will know that simplistically poverty is on the increase locally in absolute and relative terms. You will know for that 28 million people, finding new forms of sport, like a 21st century version of sport, the way sport is consumed is a challenge. Models of provision and activity are not going to meet. People want to be able to book activity as easily as they can order a takeaway, things like that, so digital comes in there. And then, I don't know what role you have, if you're managing a set of facilities or a contract, there's one there about really the challenge of balancing social and financial objectives. So there are some real challenges both in terms of inequalities, which have been stubborn and are on the increase, and also some real challenges kind of in the here and now, in terms of provision for and provision with people and local communities. So don't react badly to the title of this slide, but our argument is some of our traditional approaches to supplying sport and physical activity haven't worked, and haven't worked for particular communities. Standing back, this kind of statistics, the macro picture supports that. So it's a complex problem in activity and underrepresentation, but it doesn't always need a complex solution, but it does require, in a place like this, and Hayes going to talk through it at length, we see you're at the forefront of a different set of thinking, a different approach to how we go about what we're trying to achieve. And simplistically put, the next bullet point is saying we do more start with a deep understanding of where people are and why people are inactive and their aspirations and all the good things that are there to build on. But we also need to think about all the influences that are around that. So just think of yourself. You are probably, if you are very active and always have been, you yourself will be very motivated, you'll feel competent, you'll know what the offer is locally, the opportunity locally is, and you'll be engaged. But your immediate social network, whether that's your family or the community around you, may have a bearing on how active you are. If you live in a place where you don't see a soul out running, jogging, walking, you may think it's not quite the norm. If your children aren't experiencing at school, clubs, in community settings, positive messages and opportunities about being active, that might not be an encouragement. If there aren't places to play, it's so great to see so much today about active environments and about the role of place and environments. If you're in a place though, where there's no one to go, there's no safe place to go to be active, whether that's a formal facility or more informal, then that doesn't help you. And if you're in a place where the system, local authority, public health and other partners kind of just not into sport and physical activity, it's not a priority, it's not invested in, it can be a challenge. All these ingredients, all these influences can have a bearing on our activity levels. And what we're seeing in Greater Manchester and in other areas is a growing number of places, a growing number of people within the sector, like you were saying. We want to think about this more holistically, think about the challenge in and around, and think about how those layers, how those influences work together. That's a bit different to putting on a project. I've been involved all my life putting on projects, and they're brilliant often, but they come and go. This is about thinking systemically and systematically about how do we change the very approach we take. This is a far better slide than what I've just said. This is not related to sport, but it's from better brains than mine, thinking about whole system change. I sometimes get tired of this. You'll see it in Haley's presentation, which is great, but it's a really good way to get your head around what we are starting to see in the pilots and other areas, and start to think about how all these influences work around being active. There's a lot written about the theory of this. That slide. There's not a lot of doing, not a lot of places trying to work holistically around changing the system and what that means. There's growing examples in public health and other areas and other sectors, and it's a start. I think we see it as a start of a trend, start of a movement within our own sector in terms of sport physical activity. And I think what you're going to hear about, and I'm going to touch on to finish, is what's the reality of trying to do some of this stuff? Not the theory of it. What's the reality of trying to get those influences working together? Not just one or two, but all of them. And the real life element of that, about politics, about resource, about, dare I say, territory. So, 2 slides on what the emerging story is. Now, I don't know what you do professionally. Some of these things might seem a long way away from what you do. So the first one about leadership, you may think, well, I'm not a leader, I'm not Chief Executive Council or a leader or a council or in charge of the contract. But I suppose our argument is in that sense. Yes, seniority helps, but what we see in places like Greater Manchester and the other pilot areas we're working in, and other areas as well, Plymouth, Durham, Oxford, is this is a leadership challenge, but we need to rethink it. It's not about power and authority, it's about thinking differently as a leader within the system, realising you are part of that, and realising your own behaviours are really important. How we go about this, that's what I think we're learning most. None of our pilot works today has come up with, or probably will come up with, some kind of magic bullet in terms of activity. Yes, there's good innovative work going on, and you'll be involved in a lot of that. Actually, it's about how we work together, not in a glib kind of partnership working way, but what does deep collaboration really mean? And that leads on to the second point, where we see greatest progress in systematic whole system change and whole system leadership. We see terrific and growing relationships between people within the sector. And increasingly we see the real currency being not money, but trust. Now, one of the two nods in the audience, which is great to see in the sense of it's the relationships really get you to where you need to get to. So in Middlesbrough, there's an eminent surgeon at the hospital. There's a guy who runs an environmental charity. There's the assistant director of public health, and there's a guy who works for the leisure contractor. You wouldn't, on the outside, think, how are those four working together around tackling inactivity at scale? I don't know how they found each other. There's a really strong, palpable, common belief between those four people about what they're trying to do and the change they're trying to bring and the positive role that sport and physical activity has. It's not written down in the strategy, because we're swimming in those, aren't we? But it's something real, shared. It's a real shared belief about how they want to make life different in some of their places, using sport and physical activity, taking a holistic approach. It's 10 minutes. No, 2 minutes. So, I'm sure she said 10, didn't she? Okay. The next thing we see emerging in a real sense is a kind of methodology to what this is. But please, it's not going to be a formula, a flow diagram. It's a set of ingredients that are the pilots in the place start in different places. They have a different local context. They get to places. These are some of the ingredients. The first two ingredients and the rest. But it's not a centre leisure centre, large public leisure centre. We probably know where to start. There's fantastic expertise. We don't know as clearly with this kind of work, tackling an activity at scale. There's clearly a set of ingredients, and they're real things. So the next one, just realising you are part of the system, going back to the circles, understanding where you are. There's some great tools and techniques and tips and consultants emerging who can help you and your place map your system, whether that's a very simple, quick use of that, or it's something much deeper. I mean, in public health around obesity, there's some tremendous and challenging work done around that. But understanding you are part of the system and understanding where the points of kind of influence and effect are is something we see a growing number of places that do. I don't know whether you want a webinar that we were helping organise a couple of weeks ago. About 200 people from the sector across England were talking about community engagement. And I'm not talking about sending out a survey which says, do you think we should have a new legislation? I'm talking about deep and challenging work based on the change we want to make. And what we're seeing is, approached in the right way, done properly, it's tough stuff. Withensea were talking to us about how some of our colleagues up there feel completely caught between the community and the kind of council. And they themselves are residents, and they're in this vice between, almost two different narratives. I'll speed up. Next one, we see a lot of work going on at policy level, and a lot of work going on at individual activity intervention level. If you go back to the circles, but it's a challenge. Places are challenging themselves on joining those things up. And where does the bit in the middle? Where does the physical environment play? Where does an approach to planning fit? Where does an approach to active environments fit? Where does an approach to kind of design and housing growth fit? So I think, Hayley may touch on this, but pilots are trying to connect the different layers, and it's not simple and straightforward. Some of the common interventions, some of the common approaches are emerging in terms of actual, delivery, to use that phrase. We see an awful lot of growth in the understanding approach to asset-based approaches, social prescribing, the use of money in different ways, like really, really small micro grants as opposed to small grants, ways to energise and activate the energy. The other thing that's emerged is this whole idea of frequency. And by that I mean, we're probably all used and geared up to putting on something once a week, twice a week. Bradford are really experimenting with, if you're a young person in the Muslim community, tracking them through the day, what messages they get from family, from school, from madrasas, from the community. Are all those messages consistent? Are they understood? Are there lots of opportunities through the day? Are we really going to crack this by offering it once a week? I'll zip to test and learn. There's not a day goes by when one of my colleagues, yes, we're into test and learn. But I tell you what, I do not see a lot of it. It's something about how our system works, whether it's just public sector or others, and it's not a criticism. Test and learn is a great rhetoric, but to do that well, to do that fast, to fail from it, is not a reality. Well, we don't see it anyway. Maybe microwaves, maybe big things, but getting more innovative, getting more insight-driven in that sense is a real challenge. And the pilots are challenged with it, and we are, because our systems and processes are not keeping pace with the thinking and the change we want to bring about. So, Yvonne couldn't remember what Wallace and Gromit story this came from. But when I started teaching I taught secondary PE for 12 years. You're trained for 4 years about how to do PE lessons. Okay? Warm up, some skills, put it into a game, go and get changed. It's a bit more than that, but you get the point. Running the school as a dual use centre, there's a formula. Sunday mornings, swimming lessons for kids, you know, your cash earner. There's a kind of a pattern to how the week is. When I moved into sports development, school club links, find a school, find a club, do a leaflet, advertise the kids, off you go. The reason why I use this image is this work and working with people like, terrific people like Hayley and partners in the room and the other parts is, it's really disturbing not knowing what the next bit is. And of course there, you're just laying out the track before you get to it. And it's something we're not used to. It's something we're not used to in terms of thinking about system change and leadership within that. It's challenging, it's disruptive, and principles become so key. So, I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't use, this was the title of the presentation, which I didn't use at the start. So, that's a slight typo on it, because what it should say is, if our job is changing behaviours with communities, maybe the starting point challenge is changing some of our own behaviours in a positive way, building on what's good, working in a different way between us and our resources. So it's kind of a challenge that's within us as well as without us. There's definitely a growing movement starting, and you're absolutely in the forefront of that work and thinking here, absolutely and fundamentally. There's a growing number of places, not just the pilots, around England that are starting to look under the bonnet of what this is and the challenge of it and thinking holistically and systematically. And about what we do, really good, really fantastic, so many people are active. There's clearly something that needs to change for certain communities, for certain groups. And if we carry on, as good as it is doing what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. And just to finish off, it's absolute honour and challenge and privilege to be working with places like this, people like Hayley and other colleagues in the room on this stuff.
You took the time, really.